Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy RB3 for First Cut, and I'm bringing here a new review for The Creator, starring John David Washington and directed by Gareth Edwards. Now, if you want to read my non-spoiler review on Geeks of Color, feel more than free to. It's linked down in the description below. I actually did shoot a whole review for this film earlier this week when I saw the movie a couple weeks ago, and I actually shot the review way before. But going back and looking at it and editing it, I just didn't like how I sounded. I didn't like how I presented. I was really tired that day. My eyes were not, really visible. So it was just kind of weird. I didn't want to put that one out. So I'm re-recording this review. By this time, it's going to be Monday after the film came out. So why not we get into spoiler talks of The Creator. Now, some people online are calling this film a masterpiece. Other people are calling it meh. And other people are just calling it right out racist, which is interesting to me because that was not the takeaway that I initially got from my screening of it. And when I first watched it, I could see the interpolations in terms of the Asian representation, Southeast Asian representation, Vietnamese cultural representation that they're kind of appropriating in a lot of ways for the sake of this story. But it really depends on how you see the genre of science fiction, right? Do you see science fiction as exploitative, or do you see it as a metaphor or as an analogy for the real world and real world consequences? And when I first saw the film, that's what I wholly took it as. And I'm talking about, if you haven't seen The Creator already, this is going to get fully into spoilers. So please tune out if you haven't already seen this film. I personally recommend it. And yeah, but when you talk about this driving conflict of this film being AI and how AI is propagated against by the U.S. military and things of that nature, to the point where a lot of this wartime imagery is very similar to the imagery we got out of like the Vietnam War, and very reminiscent to Vietnam War movies like Casualties of War or Platoon or Full Metal Jacket, or all these Vietnam War movies that really showed the truth of the American imperialism and how awful and disgusting and brutal and savage it was. And instead of the Viet Cong, right, it's AI. So yeah, I personally was really fascinated by this film going in because I like Gareth Edwards' work. If you've seen his previous films, like Monster, that one is a science fiction alien film that kind of deals with border crossing. So it's a little bit deeper than you would normally get into with a science fiction film like that. Godzilla was the remake of the iconic 1950s, Japanese masterpiece that really defined the science fiction genre and the paranoia against science and against nuclear annihilation and things of that nature. And he made the remake to that. I mean, obviously the remake didn't go as deep as the original one. Came from a very Americanized, stylized perspective, but it has some things, and then Rogue One is its own story. I know there was some loss of control there. I don't really want to talk about that one as much, even though I like the film a lot. That's my second favorite of the new era of Star Wars. But he's a good director. In this day and age, we don't get a lot of original science fiction films. I think the last one I can remember was Ad Astra, and then you could go back to Gravity, if you even want to call that a science fiction film, honestly. Then there's other ones that are, of course, based on the comic books and a little bit more goofy space opera like Valorian and the Multiple Planets and things like that. But there's not a lot of sci-fi. So I personally am a sci-fi fan. I'm always going to go in with a huge heart and ready to accept whatever the sci-fi filmmaker is telling me, no matter, if it's good or bad. And I personally thought this one was pretty good. I firmly understand where the criticisms of this movie come into place in terms of how they represented Asian culture and Vietnamese culture. But for me, I thought it was such a powerful metaphor representing the blunt, unabashed, imperialistic colonization culture of the American military. And I think that's what they really go in for and discussing here. The metaphor is actually emphasized in two very important ways that I thought was kind of interesting. And the fact that the whole conflict in general that led to this AI versus human war was all based on faulty information and all based on the fact that there was a human error that actually originally launched a nuke or launched a ship to destroy LA. It wasn't actually AI. So AI is kind of being victimized indirectly for an actual human error. That's something, again, we've seen that plenty of times in Mad World Wars and our invasion of Iraq and Vietnam and Afghanistan just based on bad, faulty information that had nothing to do with the actual problems or anything that concerned us. But then that's even emphasized on a personal level when John David Washington's character Joshua is recruited by the military to save his wife, quote unquote, who he saw die with his own eyes. But the military people show him this footage of somebody who looks like his wife working in the lab. So kind of faking out his mindset and convincing him to go to war. The wife being played excellently by Gemma, who actually turns out to be the quote unquote creator of the whole AI system technology thing that ends up being revealed later in the third act. Again, it's a metaphor for the American propaganda that pushes us into war to begin with. It's the global big scale ideas of mass genocide happening because of human error, human innovation, just like, you know, the invention of the atomic bomb by J. Robert Oppenheimer. We just saw that in the movie this year. But it also conveys that metaphor on a personal level by seeing those through John David Washington's eyes, seeing it through like an average soldier eyes who might see something like 9/11, might get personally affected by something they see on the news and be persuaded to join the fight. So yeah, I think it is a really good job at hammering in that metaphor. And John David Washington did a really good job playing that soldier who was grieving, then suddenly becomes motivated to get his wife, see his wife. And then ultimately when he does see his wife and sees that she's actually dead, of course he has that emotional breakdown. I think that breakdown is where people are kind of criticizing John David Washington's performance. I think they may have expected a scene with that much emotional catharsis to be bigger, to be showier, to be however, you know what I mean? And is that the fault of Gareth Edwards for not maybe directing that performance, pushing that harder out of him? Maybe. I think John David Washington is a remarkable actor, and I hate when people get into this discourse online trying to say otherwise, because if you watch BlacKkKlansman, he was nominated for an Oscar for a reason. If you watch Ballers on HBO, now it's streaming on Netflix, he's amazing in that show. So he's an amazing actor. Don't clown on John David. He's dope. Some other characters in the film come off and read as a little stiffer. Kim Watanabe's character and the young woman who plays Alfie, her name is in the description down below. I don't want to mispronounce it, but I believe her first name is Madeleine. She was okay. Ken was okay. There were more on the stiffer side, but I personally think that was contributing to the fact that they were AI, like they were robots or robot originated. And that speaks to the whole relationship with Alfie and Joshua, right? Because it's very reminiscent of sci-fi that we've seen before that I personally love, like Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men or The Last of Us on HBO, or, you know, before it was in video game form. Mandalorian on Disney Plus, the first 2 seasons. All of those kind of telling that like lone wolf and cub kind of story, which I thought was good. I thought that was well handled, and I really did feel like you could build the connection between those two, because in a way, Alfie was like his inherited daughter. Like he lost a daughter, his pregnant wife and his daughter their child through that initial attack in the beginning, but he ends up gaining a new family through AI. And, you know, I think that's another reason why people are not liking this movie. It's the AI division. Currently in Hollywood right now, it's a hot button issue. A lot of people are anti-AI, which I totally understand. But I think there's a difference between generative AI that's used for stuff like ChatGPT and like making comic book art and all this goofy stuff, and real AI that can actually contribute and make a difference in society. And I think this movie accurately shows that it's not about the technology that we should be fearing. It's about the people who possess that technology. It's about the people who wield that technology and that weaponry and who's in control of it, because they're the real problems. They're the ones who are causing the real pain and hurt in situations all around the world. And, you know, that goes down to the U.S. government with the Manhattan Project, creating the atomic bomb. That even comes down to us during the drone strikes, you know, when they were at their peak, we're just hammering away at the Middle East and just racking up mad civilian casualties. So this movie shows you, like, yeah, American imperialism is bad. And if you give American imperialists, if you give capitalists, if you give colonizers mad advanced technology and weapons, they're going to get more brutal and savage than you would have ever expected. And that's the case here. And I think this movie does a really good job of showing that it's not about the actual AI. It's not about the actual technology. It's these dumb idiots and billionaires and military industrial complex people who are going to be running it down the line, who we should be scared of. And yeah, but I think this movie does a great job of showing you the human side of AI, which is funny to even say that out loud. And that's something that is just not traditional in the history of cinema to begin with. You think of AI, you think of evil stuff, right? Like Terminator, all kinds of evil AI all throughout the world. It's just like AI taking over in cinema. But yeah, this is one of the first and few humanistic approaches I've seen to like AI. Same thing to like Her with Spike Jonze, how that kind of had a loving endearment of technology in a new age kind of way. I think that I really enjoyed that this embraced technology instead of pushing it away, which I think a lot of Hollywood will do, and a lot of Hollywood has already done, because again, it's taking up jobs in screenwriting and stuff. But there's a difference. It's not just all about us, people. And I think that's where it comes down to for me. As my personal movie going experience, I enjoyed the film. I liked it a lot. I recommend it to people, but I understand if you're from an Asian or Southeast Asian or any kind of Asian community and watching this film and are turned away by it, I totally understand that too, because, it definitely is approaching and appropriating cultures that, are not belonging to its director or its writer, who's also co-written. This film is co-written by Chris Wise. Chris Wise. Now, Chris Wise, my apologies. Now, all of that thematic, subtextual, metaphorical stuff out of the way, which I thought was brilliant. That's my favorite part of the film. Movie also works really good on a visual level too. I mean, you can never deny Gareth Edwards' eye for cinematography, eye for visual effects, eye for making sci-fi look real and textured and feel natural. And that's what was done here in this film. I believe this is a first-time cinematographer, Orphan Sulphur, who actually, originally Greg Fraser, who shot Rogue One and also recently shot The Batman, and he won an Academy Award for Dune. He was working on Dune 2 while this movie was going into production. So I guess Greg Fraser kind of oversaw a lot of the pre-production and helping put it together. So he deserves his credit too. But Orphan Sulphur, man, they shot this movie beautifully. They found a way to make this futuristic, dystopian society look, like I said, real, look textured. They made it look natural. The use of natural light and sunlight and locations. I think they shot in over 80 locations. Totally commend everything that they did to make this film feel practical. The only weird part about the cinematography is that it's shot in 2.48 or 2.47 to 1 aspect ratio, which is super widescreen. So sometimes some of the framing looks a little awkward. But again, that's nitpicks. If you're looking at the performances and you're saying some people are kind of stiff, to me, that's a nitpick when looking at the overall thing. But who was not, mid in the performance world, I will say, was Allison Janney. Of course, Allison Janney is going to always be an amazing actress. She won mad Emmys and was nominated for Oscars and stuff. But if she puts it on in this film, bro, this film, she really sells you on being that ruthless, hardcore dictator kind of person. So it was just a great film overall, man. I enjoyed this flick. But I totally understand, again, if you're not liking it, if you're not rocking with it, that's you. For me, I dug it. I don't know if it's a must watch. And again, I don't know if this is on the same, people are saying this is on the same level as Arrival or something. I definitely don't put it up there with Arrival. Arrival is one of the best films ever made. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's definitely not up there. Is it up there with Ad Astra? For sure. I like Ad Astra, but I think this is a little bit better because it's hitting on the topic that feels personal to me. And, if I'm keeping it 100, and maybe this part is going to get edited out, I don't know. But I've seen mad sci-fi films over the years, decades, that were mad anti-black, but nobody really had that much controversy. So okay, I'm shutting up. Anyway, that's it for First Cut and for RB3 here on the on First Cut, reviewing The Creator. I dug it. If you don't dig it, totally let me know in the comments down below and teach me something, man. Teach me something that I might be missing in my review, that maybe it is approaching it from an imperialistic perspective, but the appropriation is just a little too much. I know the titles in between had the Asian lettering. I'm not sure which I know the title cards in between the chapters had that Asian lettering. I'm not sure exactly which language that was, but I know that's kind of crazy. To me, I also felt I didn't like that when I saw that in Bullet Train, you know what I mean? But people like that because it shows the influences that it came from. And I understand that, but I didn't rock with that as much, and I could kind of see how those kind of arguments could steer towards the appropriation side of it. But let me know what y'all think. Comments down below. Hit the like, Subscribe if you haven't already, and yeah, let us know. Let me know. The creator, John David Washington, you have any plans on checking that out? I might do a Saw review. I also saw that one early. Wasn't loving it that much though, so he was just killing a bunch of Mexicans. See, that's my thing. I take the race into account with one film and not the other, so what's wrong with me? Is that my problem, America? Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments down below. Anyway, it's your boy RB3, man. I'm getting out of here. Peace.